When you think of great sports video games, you usually don't think of anything close to an arena football game. People want to see NCAA football return, or a sim competitor to Madden, or NFL Street, or Fight Night, or NBA Ballers. And while those are the popular options, perhaps the reason arena football games were so unpopular was due to the league they were representing. Arena football is an American football game played indoors with 8 players on each side, rather than the traditional 11. The field is half of the size of a regular professional football field, and instead of there being an out-of-bounds sideline, there is instead walls, meaning there is no out-of-bounds unless a player gets flipped over the wall. The result of this was high-scoring, fast-paced football that was entertaining to watch. The original Arena Football League began in 1987 and ran until 2008, when they filed for bankruptcy. During this time, the league was successful enough to have its own minor league, dubbed Arena Football 2. Because of EA's exclusive rights agreement with the NFL, only EA can produce simulation NFL games. So it makes sense why football fans beg for a company to pick up the license to new football leagues when they arise. People want options. With the AAF and then the XFL, people really wanted to see video games for those leagues, but the leagues folded before that was even an option. Even I made a video pounding the table for an XFL video game, which has not aged well. With Arena Football, however, we actually got not one, but 2 games from none other than Electronic Arts. That's right, the company with exclusive rights to making NFL games, during a time when they were the only company making NCAA football games, as well as experimenting with the NFL head coach games, decided to give yet another attempt at creating a football video game. And the result was actually surprisingly good. I'd argue the game holds up better today than it did back then, and serves as a time capsule for a league that failed shortly after the second game's release. After ceasing operations and liquidating their assets, the original Arena Football League ended in 2008, but the owners of Arena Football 2 minor league teams banded together to relaunch the league in 2010. The second go-around never received a video game, and in 2019 ended once and for all. Other indoor football leagues came and went throughout the last decade, but none stayed. The last remaining footprint of arena football is the China Arena Football League, which is still running today. The arena football video games were likely created too late to be successful. Back when Kurt Warner forced his way into NFL stardom after an incredible run in the AFL, an arena football video game would have made more sense to capitalize on the eventual NFL MVP's success and the attention he brought to the league. It happened how it happened, however, and I'm happy with the result, because the result was one of the most fun and underrated sports video games ever made. In IGN's review of the game, and yes, I know, IGN is the last place you want to hear from about sports video games, but hear me out. They fully encapsulate the excitement and thrill of the arena football game. It's the 4th quarter, and with 4 seconds remaining in the game, the Arizona Rattlers score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to go up by 6 points over my San Jose SaberCats. All is lost, right? In arena football, you will quickly learn no game is ever out of reach. On the ensuing kickoff, my receiver sprinted left, following his lead blocker. He then throws a vicious stiff arm, shakes a tackler, and sprints loose down the left sideline. On the way, the opposing coach just happened to be standing on the field, and the receiver was sure to lower his shoulder and knock the coach to the ground before crossing the goal line to tie the game. While celebrating, the receiver started bowing to the crowd and yelling, "I'd like to thank all you people over here," and turning around, "and all the people over here." Suddenly, an angry Rattler defender pummels my receiver and screams, "You're welcome, punk." The ensuing extra point wins the game for San Jose with no time left on the clock. That's right, this isn't Madden. In the AFL games, you can truck through the opposing team's head coach, players talk trash, scoring can happen at any time, punting is not a thing, and EA knocked the game out of the park. Despite having 3 other football video game franchises at the time, EA did not skin Madden for arena football. They actually took the challenge of creating a unique football game head on, and the result wasn't a buggy miss, but an enjoyable and exciting arcade sports game. EA Tiburon created a game that captured everything great about arena football. Games averaged a total of over 100 points, hard hits could knock players over the wall and into the stands, authentic playbooks were created based on the ones used by real AFL coaches, such as Jay Gruden, who was an AFL coach at the time. Throwing the ball was the move, as running was used mostly in short yardage situations. Because of the 8-on-8 rule set, the field was wide open. Crossing routes and deep bombs were the best plays, and hitting a receiver on a drag is an easy way to flip over the wall, which is just awesome to see. One of the best parts of the gameplay is using your receivers. Throwing a bomb, switching to a receiver, diving for it, and then getting smacked by a defender is awesome. The game is full of one-handed, leaping, and other crazy catching animations. EA could have gone the easy route and simply skinned Madden. And while the two arena football games do use the same engine as PS2 era Madden, which is obviously not a bad thing, EA created a ton of new animations exclusively for the arena games. When playing defense, you'll notice how many different and varied tackling animations there are. The addition of the walls add physics to the tackling, allowing you to smack an offensive player into the wall and watch their body flail through the air like a helicopter. Every time you view a loading screen or pause the game, you are met with AFL rules. After playing through the game for a bit, you'll be an expert on the AFL. Some of the rules take some time to get used to, such as only one linebacker being allowed to blitz, and it must be through the A gap, and that linebackers cannot drop into deep coverage and must stay in a box, which the game will highlight for you. In terms of defensive controls, this game had what Madden 21 is essentially advertising, which is user-controlled defensive lineman moves. You can use the left stick while holding B to either swim, spin, or bull rush. EA also added a telemetry system that shows you the health and fatigue of your opponent's players, as well as scoring and passing patterns, which is basically in-game scouting. Because the field is only 50 yards, even if you're backed up against your own end zone, field goals are always the move on 4th down, unless you want to go for it. Because field goals are so prominent and punting isn't a real option, EA remade the kicking mechanic for the game with the right stick. In terms of depth, the game does feature a 20-season deep mode where you can sign players. There is no draft in the AFL, but it lacks player development, training camp, or anything like that. The initial game, simply titled Arena Football, released for $29.99, which makes sense considering the game features a lesser-known league and doesn't have the same amount of depth you'd expect from a PS2 era Madden game. That said, today the game holds up incredibly well, as current Madden games have devolved to a state where even games from 2006 that were considered shallow for their time actually rival the newer ones. Today you can find the game for super cheap for either the Xbox or the PS2, and it is a blast to play. The best part of the game is easily the gameplay, which is not only a fun diversion from traditional football games, but it's also incredibly addicting to play. Despite the season mode lacking the micromanaging level of depth you might want, the gameplay is just so unique that it's easy to sink multiple seasons into this game. Fun fact, the cover athlete John Dutton was not playable in this game, in classic EA fashion. Even though the rest of the game was awesome, they just had to screw something up. That said, I wish the flaws in modern EA sports games were this minor. The next year, EA released a sequel called Arena Football Road to Glory. The game had some slight changes, such as the ability to use both your receiver and your quarterback at the same time, a roster creator, create a team, unlockable historic teams, the Arena Football 2 minor league, and a field goal challenge minigame. While the game isn't that different from the previous one, it is the definitive way to play it, and the small additions do make it a better purchase. It's also still cheap, but if the only version you can find is the original, you really aren't missing out on that much. The game was criticized for being nearly a roster update by IGN. Yes, IGN, I wish they were as critical today. Many media outlets called out EA for sticking to old-gen hardware for the game, as their NFL, NCAA, and NBA franchises were already 2 years in on the PS3 and Xbox 360. But perhaps EA knew something we didn't, as the Arena Football League died the next year. Even when the league returned in 2010, no new games were released for it. From a business perspective, that makes sense, but it's a bummer considering how fun and unique the Arena Football games were. Had the league not filed for bankruptcy, could we have seen an Arena Football game on the next gen? Maybe. Unfortunately, due to the lackluster sales of the series and the demise of the league, no major publisher or developer has attempted to create a video game on a smaller football league. For those looking for an alternative to Madden on today's hardware, it's not going to happen. That said, however, these games have aged pretty well and even today are a blast to play. Whether it's on the original Xbox, PS2, or an emulator on PC that can render the game in 4K, Arena Football and Arena Football Road to Glory are worth your time. Take yourself back to an era where EA cared enough to make 4 separate games on a single sport, and they were all actually really good. Thanks for watching.